everyone could have a seat, we'll go ahead and get started. I just flew in from Washington, D.C., and sitting on the plane, someone said to me, "I really enjoyed your talk." And I was thinking to myself, my God, never happened to me before. And someone else said, "Hi, how are things going?" And I'm like sitting up there in the front of the plane, and I'm beginning to wonder, what in the hell is happening here? People are awfully friendly in Washington. And then I realized when someone said, I heard you talking, and I think that what we need is confidence in the economy. And I'm thinking, well, that's interesting, because that's what I was planning on talking about, the importance of next practices. And I'm like, they must be reading my mind as I'm working on the presentation. And I can tell you that I'm not Ben Bernanke. But I feel the same way he does. And I am thrilled to be here with you today. I'm actually the CEO of a company that I founded almost 2 decades ago called Experience Engineering in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And in Minneapolis, it's a group of us that have been eating, sleeping, breathing, unraveling human experience for a select group of clients over the years who want to learn about managing experience and the value that those experiences can create. Now, how many of you experienced my talking last year? Anybody? Thank you. The year before? Now, those that were here last year may remember, I always talk about this conference because I'm generally the oldest person in the room. And the first year I came here 3 years ago, I was amazed. There was Red Bull everywhere and all of these power drinks and power bars. So last year I had a Red Bull and I think I had 2 power bars while working on my presentation. And those who were here last year remember that I actually fell off the stage as I was pointing to one of the slides. And I promise that I won't do that. Everyone thought that was part of my actual presentation to get some sympathy. But as we get started today, one of the things I'd love to have you do is think about how your business causes its customers to feel. How does your business cause your customers to feel? And the reason that I think that's so important is that we have lost sight of why businesses exist. You see, Peter Drucker told us many years ago that the purpose of a business is to create value for its customers, and the reward is profit. And somehow, we have lost sight of that. And in losing sight of that, we have all sorts of problems. This is the big bull out in front of Wall Street. And it's my belief, now this is a rather crude, you can tell I'm not Bernanke when I describe the economy the way I'm about to describe it, is it's constipated. And what we need is an enema. It is absolutely amazing how everything has been ground to a halt, how people are waiting for the other shoe to drop. And if we wait long enough, it's going to fall right on us. And we're like ostriches with our heads buried in the ground, hoping that the storm will pass, and soon we will learn that those that kept their head in the ground will wake up to a different world. Because I believe firmly that the reason we're in trouble is we really lost sight of that. How many remember the movie Wall Street in 1987? The point is, ladies and gentlemen, that greed, for a lack of a better word, is good. Greed is right. Greed works. Greed clarifies, cuts through, and captures. What was so absolutely astounding to me is that has been what businesses have been doing. And I call upon you today because you can make a difference. You can help transform the way that value is created in your organizations. And I think that these voices will not go unheard. Now, it's ironic that Michael Douglas also was in a movie in 1993, Falling Down. How many have seen or heard Falling Down? Where he played Bill Foster, and he attempts to go home to his daughter's birthday, and he abandons his car in traffic and ends up in a what looks like a McDonald's, basically. And he got there after the magical hour. He got there after 10 o'clock, and he wanted breakfast. Have you ever tried to order breakfast at McDonald's at 10:02? Well, he goes through a whole deal. Sort of, I'm mad, I'm fed up with this. He orders his breakfast, doesn't get it, pulls out a submachine gun, and it's amazing. He actually got service and got the sandwich. But it's ironic that he plays this customer, victimized, and he also represented the greed that I think has gotten us into the frame that we're in today. We've become so focused on how to create that result, the ROI, the return on investment, that we actually mortgage the future of the country. And if it doesn't change quickly, we have problems. I've been touched by it personally. Most of you have probably been touched by it personally. Back in November, I'm in Dallas, rental car, trying to fill it with gas so I don't get charged $20 a gallon or whatever the hell the going rate was when you pull in with a rental car with even an eighth of a tank empty. So I pull into the station and I notice, boy, usually there are a whole bunch of people here trying to fill up. And all of a sudden I realize that it's cordoned off and I can't get gas. And I thought, this is scary. I had lived through the fuel shortage, the energy crunch years ago. And I began to think, we are in deep caca. Now, what's so complex is that the world has changed. Things have changed so dramatically that we don't even know how to figure out the puzzle any longer, because we took our eye off of value creation and got into value extraction. In doing this value extraction, we have had, how many remember the Bomar brain, or anybody? Bomar brain was like the first calculator before TI. Early technology. I mean, this was like moving from the abacus to a portable personal calculator. And when you look at this, you look at some of the calculators that are out there today, or even look at the framing that we have today online, what we've done is taken a representation of what has become the classic calculator. We never changed the framework. We never talked about other ways to think about doing it. We just transferred old framing and kept using that. So I believe that a new era is going to sweep the country. And I'm pleased to announce that there's actually a movement that's starting. Two things that I'm involved in right now. One is a thing called the Experience Management Institute that will be announcing a formation of with a major academic institution that will actually have a degree in this idea of experience management. And it's amazing to me how limited our thought process is. As we looked at this, there was a gentleman who was on the board of advisors who was an academic and noticed that game design was part of what we were talking about. And he said, I couldn't believe it, he said, how many people are going to be designing games? What's the importance of even doing that? Yet I believe that the future is going to be that fusion that we see in game design of design and engineering and technology and what happens in the background. These are going to be the most valued people in the country. The second movement that I'm involved with, and I hope you join this thought process. I actually feel like I'm launching a movement today. But I'm so fed up. I am really fed up because I got so tired of everyone being constipated, I decided you got to do something. And we've created a project in Minnesota that we're going to launch and hopefully expand to other cities called the Phoenix Effect. Those people that are willing to learn about value creation in the future will rise like a phoenix from the ashes, and the rest shall perish. Now, I believe that getting back to principles of long-term value creation are critical. And to me, Warren Buffett, who we're hoping to get as a keynote speaker at the launch of this whole concept, understands old-time value. I mean, here's Warren Buffett, and Berkshire Hathaway owns Dairy Queen. Now, what happened was we turned Wall Street into a slot machine. And if I were Ben Bernanke, which I'm not, but I might get on TV and try that, is moving Wall Street from New York to Omaha and developing this longer-term perspective of value creation. Because it reminds me of when people invested in companies because they believed in companies. And when I was in high school, I bought a share of Allegheny Airlines, which is now US Air. And I thought it was the greatest thing that had ever happened in my life. I'd watch what they did, but I believed in that company. I would go to the airport to watch airplanes take off. They had engaged me in such a way that I felt vested in the company. Today, with day traders, I believe that the market in Omaha would ban day traders, and it would ban group buying, that it would be back to individuals investing in companies they believe in. Now, whether that ever happens or not, I don't know. Probably not in my lifetime. But what I did notice is that that actual stock certificate is worth more than the stock is today. That you can actually sell the certificate for somewhere around $100. So I believe that that opportunity, people understanding and getting back to value creation, it isn't about building roads. It isn't about infrastructure as much as it is about businesses, large and small, creating value. and we will avoid the depression. Now, what I believe is also exciting is that executives have been saying that their organization's interaction with customers will be the greatest challenge in their operations between now and 2010. And I couldn't agree more, because they literally didn't care. I mean, here's my bank. Bank Solid, Bank Safe, Bank US Bank. It's about them. It isn't about me. It isn't about what I'm feeling. They're still in the mode of perceiving themselves as a product and branding it as a product. And what we know is that emotions are important determinants of economic behavior, more so than rationality. What would be greater proof of that than the fact that stock like GE is selling at $2 a share? I mean, rationally, we would buy it, but emotionally, we're constipated. Emotionally, we're frozen. Emotionally, we're deer in the headlights. Now, why have we not been able to latch on to understanding that the value we create is much more than the product or service, and that they have very little influence on preference that individuals have over the subconscious sensory and emotional elements derived by the total experience? A colleague of mine, Jerry Zaltman, who I've been doing work with for many, many years at the Harvard Business School, has written a book, How Customers Think, how we begin to understand their unconscious thought. And I do recommend the book to anyone who's interested in that. But let's look at firms of endearment. There are a group of people that wrote a book called Firms of Endearment. Jag Seth, who's at Emory University, was one of the authors. And what they did is they asked people, 2,000 people, if a company went away tomorrow, name a company that you would mourn the loss of, that would change your life, that would impact you in such a way that you would have a feeling of loss. And these were the firms that rose to the top of that list. Now, what they wanted to do is, how many have read Good to Great? Good to Great started out with financial performance of a company. And among those, two that I recall, Fannie Mae and Circuit City. And it said, let's look at the financial performance of the company and let's compare that to what they did to be successful. Firms of endearment started from, let's look at those companies that people are emotionally engaged with and determine their economic performance compared to the good to great companies. And what they learned was that over a 10-year period, the firms of endearment outperformed the S&P 500 and the good to great firms. In the first 5 years on a 1.7 to 1 ratio, and over a 10-year period, a 3 to 1 ratio. So this short-term perspective has been amazing. The other thing that's been amazing is what they then did was looked at these firms of endearment. And they said, what is it that makes these firms so unique? And in looking at that, they developed a thing called a SPICE model. And this SPICE model is very simple. What it says is there are 5 constituencies that an organization serves: society, partners, investors, customers, and employees. And that the value they created for those constituencies was equal, that they did not sacrifice any of those constituencies for the sake of another, that they were committed to creating value for all of those constituencies. And thus, these firms of endearment end up becoming what I would call that value that they've created is the experiential value that is associated with the brand. But the real value exists in the experiences that we create. So as we look at that world of experience, one of the stores is the Container Store. I'm working on 2 new books right now, and one of them is around the employee experience. And in particular, I wanted to study the Container Store. The Container Store puts its people out on the floor after 247 hours of training. So I went through the training as they opened a new store in Edina, Minnesota. The training was so engaging that I had to be out of the country the Saturday that they opened. Had to fly out that morning. The night before the grand opening, I was so bonded to the people in that company, so proud of what the Container Store was all about. I mourned not being there for grand opening. I couldn't believe it. I was like, God, if I could move my trip. I felt left out. I was so invested in what they were about. The average retailer puts someone out on the floor after about 22 hours of training, quote, training. The grand opening party the night before transformed the Container Store into a party. It was absolutely amazing. People eating out of containers. And they say that it's not just a store, it's a life-changing experience. I go back there now, and everybody that was in my graduating class that's working there, I feel bonded to them in such a way, and they rave about what it's like to work there. But unless we start paying attention to all of those constituencies, we have a big problem.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Competition. Bad for them.
Hey, fellas.
Great for you. Finally, a new choice in domestic shipping. DHL.
What the world needs now is love. It's the only thing that there's just.
Your call will be answered in 30 minutes.
My car ready yet?
Whatever happened to customer service? At DHL, it's alive and well.
I'm on it.
Call us and see how we're changing the way the shipping business does business.
DHL, a number of years ago, launched this advertising campaign. This is how disconnected the pieces are. This is so far from the reality of what DHL is all about. It's absolutely ludicrous. How can we run businesses that are so disconnected? Take this example. I get a package. We've moved within the building to another suite number, 320. The package ends up going back to DHL. And I'm like, what the heck? He couldn't figure out that we're in the same building? So that night, I traipse off at 5 o'clock at night because I needed the package. And I go to the DHL office. And 3 of us are waiting for a person to magically appear at the counter. And we waited almost 10 minutes before anybody even came to the counter at what would typically be rush hour. But just look at the body language. It's of little wonder that DHL announced that its U.S. domestic services would be discontinued January 20th, 2009, reconstructing measures to reduce U.S. operating costs by over 80%, helping achieve its financial targets. They deserved everything they got, and more. To have the audacity to promise an experience like that and not provide it. Are we crazy? Well, that comes from the world of make and sell, having a product, thinking about what they do as a product versus an experience. And the world has changed dramatically. The world has become a world of sensing and responding. And the tools that we continue to use are square tires. Even though we've got tools and technology and all sorts of stuff inside the wagon, we continue to frame everything the way we've always framed it. And those days must come to an end. Because businesses, the economy, have become so complex that we cannot wrap our minds around it without technology, without business intelligence, and without all of it synchronized into a holistic value proposition for the 5 constituencies. It's no different than managing by wire and flying by wire in an airplane. When the 777 was built, you could no longer fly that plane without computer assistance. And look at this. This is like Star Trek. This is the inside of the 787 that will be flying soon. But that's what businesses have become, yet we think we can still manage them the way we always have. We need to begin to think about businesses as systems that create value, and the importance of how the pieces come together is more important than any one component. Now you see this in the language that goes around. People are still talking about channels and haven't figured out that there's a blurring, that it's a holistic experience that wraps us, and that we no longer even know where the purchase is considered, whether it's on the web. Best Buy says that over 1/3 of its purchases are decided prior to coming in the store as a result of research on the web. Yet we continue to think of the web as a media because we continue to frame it in a way that's pages and thinking about it and framing it like advertising. It's scary. But experience is everywhere. Everyone's talking about it, but no one really wants to really do it. I mean, experience DFW. If we really understood what experience was about, it's about the effect that we create for our constituencies and the way all of the signals come together to create that. Now, Starbucks was the poster child for that, and what scares me is that they're now getting into a loyalty card. Now, I have a thing about loyalty cards. I see it as buying temporary business from customers. If they were real, and this is the new Starbucks Gold card, if they were real, it would be integrated into a much greater experience. But I'm also fascinated by a test that Starbucks is doing. This is this new instant coffee that Starbucks has launched, so that you can have coffee with you anywhere, anytime, hot or cold. And these little packets of coffee can actually be stored in your Starbucks mug that you open, and you take the little packets out, and you can create a hot drink with hot water or a cold drink with cold water. But what I don't see as you go on and look at the integration of all of this, it's available on the web, but I can't get it in Minnesota? No. Absolutely absurd the way that we frame some of these things. Yet some organizations are understanding that the breadth of the experience they create is greater. Mini comes with an adventure kit that has a whole bunch of things, window poetry, etc., so that there's the beginning of understanding the breadth of what experience can be. Now, we've worked with numerous organizations over the years along this continuum of knowledge and transformation to understanding experience as a value proposition. And in doing that, many of you who were here last year may remember I have my top 10 list of experiences that I hate. Well, one of them, I think the greediest experience of all that exists out there right now, is what the airlines are doing to us. In fact, Ryanair recently announced they're going to charge to use the loo, to use the restroom. I mean, this is getting crazy. We're going to have to take plastic bottles on a plane. There'll be empty bottles because we can't drink the liquid going through security. So maybe there's some logic there that they're following. I don't understand it. But when we look at what's happened, Northwest, as you knew, or as I mentioned last year, had 85% of the lift out of Minnesota. And what was great is that Northwest continues to think that it's my loyalty card. And as I told you before, I hate Northwest. They think I'm a loyal customer because I'm platinum. I can't stand them because I don't like the way they cause me to feel about myself. I get grumpy when I'm not upgraded. I become a little twit. I'm terrible. I pout. I almost stamp my feet, and I begrudge a 5-year-old a seat up in first class. What makes me so different sitting in row 42, needing water, versus this? I'm the same guy. I represent the same business to them that I did 5 minutes before, and yet I have to beg for water back in row 41. It doesn't make any sense. Well, recently, Southwest CEO announced that Southwest was coming to Minneapolis. I was excited. I actually got to leave the Northwest herds and take off on Southwest. This past Sunday, I did my inaugural flight out of Minneapolis. I was pumped. I walked up to the desk. I said, I am so glad you guys are here. And the agent said to me, you wouldn't believe how many people are telling us that. It feels great. I'm like, boy, this is really neat. So what I wanted to do is trying to understand how synchronized and customer back, thinking customer back versus company out, these organizations are. As you know, yesterday was St. Patrick's Day. So I visited the Southwest website. And here it was, you know, Lucky and Love. I then went to my other off-brand that I like, which is JetBlue, and they had a back and forth Irish summer promotion going. And I went to Aer Lingus, and of course that was very green. And then I went to my good friends at Delta that now own Northwest, and I couldn't get the page to come up. And I then went to my good friends at Northwest, and St. Patrick's Day? Is there such a thing? Absolutely astounding how different these were. Now, what is even more amazing was 2 weeks ago, I wanted to book a trip on Northwest, and I got an amenity voucher that we spent over a half hour trying to get the system to accept. I mean, here's someone who's pissed off to begin with. If you don't think that the codes didn't match in terms of numbers of digits, it was a disgrace. And finally, someone said, forget it. For $25, we've wasted more money trying to figure out how this damn thing works. What are they thinking? Now, I think I may have shared with some of you voice and what voices do last year. This is our family pet, goes in for surgery, has a growth in its mouth. We come home that afternoon, bring the dog home. We're told that they're going to do a biopsy and we'll know what the status is in a couple of days. On our answering machine, they leave the following message.
Hi, this is Dr. Schultz at South Highland Pet Hospital. I got pathology results on Brewster. Dr. Laird's out of town until Thursday. The mass in the mouth is a malignant melanoma, and the prognosis is not good. It'll probably spread to lymph nodes and lung, that it may overtake the area in the mouth and cause Brewster not to be able to eat or have a bloody discharge or a lot of odor or pain. So unfortunately, there's really nothing much we can do for him. If you have any questions, please give us a call. And we might, if he seems uncomfortable, we could probably put him on a drug. Well, he's on Rimadyl right now, but we could probably put him on Rimadyl to keep him more comfortable. So that's all. Thanks.
I mean, what if our children, you know, we have older kids. I shouldn't even talk about older kids. I was devastated by the message. It had a profound impact. And the dog lived about another year. And we made a decision to get another dog. And her name is Lola. Same breed. Do you think we went back to the same vet? No. Why are we so into process without understanding the effect of the processes that we have in place? I mean, it seems so simple. Systems thinking. What is the effect I want to create, and how do I create that effect? So what we've learned is that behaviors are driven by attitudes that we develop. The attitudes are shaped by the emotions that we feel. And the emotions that we feel are impacted by the clues that are emitted in an experience. Now, this is hugely important because although everyone pays lip service to the importance of emotion, and I say lip service, we still don't fully understand how to integrate it in most organizations. And it's because of this make and sell versus sense and respond world that a brand is what you feel about a company, and the experience is what the company causes you to feel, the effect it has on you. Some of those effects are so transformational that we cannot live without them. So when we begin to look at these value relationships of what's created for the brand and what's created for the customer, it's of little wonder that these are hard to separate at times. But what FedEx would tell you, Fred Smith would tell you that FedEx is not in the package delivery business. They're not even in the customer service business. They are in the peace of mind business. And when you view your business that way, here's what people feel.
The storm was on a Monday, and we got back here on the Sunday after, and there was no communication. No, we didn't know what we would find. The penguins have been here since we opened. I didn't know if they would be alive when we got here. I ran up here, and it was dark. We had no power. But, you know, with the flashlight, I was able to 1, 2, 3, and then finally 17, 18, and when I got to 19, that's when I ran in there. We usually keep it pretty cool in there. The water's about 62, the air temperature's about 67. When we got back, the water was at 94 degrees, the air probably a little warmer than that.
When we heard that it would be the best thing to airlift the animals out, the Monterey Bay Aquarium volunteered to do that.
I actually flew with them, and we went out to Monterey, landed at 1:30 in the morning. 9 months is a long time to go without penguins. Do you know that? It's been hard walking by here and not seeing penguins. We had a little wind-up toy penguin in there that we kept for 9 months. I think if you're an animal keeper in an institution like this, you really shouldn't have a favorite, but that's impossible with patients. She's an adorable bird. She'll sing to you. I sing to her. She's just a great animal. I know I'm looking forward to, the entire staff is looking forward to, and I think the city is looking forward to the penguins coming back. FedEx has been unbelievable. They're flying the birds in. They're taking care of everything. What can we do to safely and humanely get the animals back to you?
Basically, a call came into the public relations department at FedEx from Melissa Lee, and she had the idea that FedEx has shipped animals in the past and wanted to know if we could help out. And being the native New Orleanian, I immediately jumped on it and said, of course we can do this.
And the next thing we know, we're working on bringing our penguins home.
We needed special pressurization requirements for the sea otters. We needed to make sure the temperature was okay, which meant that we needed to charter an Airbus aircraft.
We will never forget the generosity of FedEx, and the city of New Orleans will never forget the role that FedEx has played in bringing the penguins home and reopening the aquarium.
When they understand the emotional value and it permeates an organization, it becomes pretty powerful. Because then managing the clues, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and what we feel become critical. We talk about functional clues, mechanic clues, and humanic clues in the experiences that we have. And it's the way that we end up categorizing clues to be able to work with them as systems, to understand how they can create the effect that we want to create, that customers desire. Now, I have never done a presentation without toilet paper. And I have the largest collection of toilet paper photographs on the face of the earth, I believe. And what I love is this conference, I get them from Dusseldorf and in New Zealand and all over. And I just want to share my most recent discovery. See, I talk about the toilet paper triangle being a clue in a hotel experience. Well, Microsoft had an event that was a judging of a web design contest that I participated in judging. And I stayed at a hotel called The Standard in Los Angeles. Anyone ever stay at The Standard? It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. People are dancing in the lobby. Had to weave my luggage through the crowd to get to the front desk. And I go up to the room, and here was the latest thing in toilet paper art that I want to share, which was actually instructions on how to use the toilet paper. So I didn't want to break with one of my signature clues, which is always having toilet paper somewhere in my presentation. I don't know what that says about my presentations, but what becomes important is what kind of experience do the clues and the experiences we create connect to? How do those clues come together in a way that actually brings them together, linking us to that experience in a way that we don't even understand or even perceive? But that bond that is an emotional bond that links us and links the clues together to create that feeling. And I believe that that is ultimately what next practices will be wrapped around. Because the question isn't whether you're having experiences, the question is how managed or how random and haphazard is the experience. Now, our organization works along 3 levels, because what ends up happening is there are breakdowns. You see, people like to learn separately, and there are separate pockets of learning, and then we try to translate that to people who are creating, and then we try to translate that to the people who are doing. That's an old assembly line. We holistically have to move through that process so that everyone is on the same page. And the tools that we use, one in particular is a thing called an experience motif that we use to align the clues to, which is what's that emotional end frame that is the effect we want to have, the emotional effect we want to have on customers. I have to be careful I don't fall. That would be a bad clue to do it 2 years in a row. But what we can then do is begin to weigh these clues and understand what clues have to be moved from this area of rejection, the clues that are in that acceptance or commodity zone, and moved up into an area of building preference. Now, some of these clues on the physical side are very simple. I mean, we've done work for H&R Block and a lot of financial institutions and Jackson Hewitt, and you go into a financial institution, you're lucky they'll even invite you back to their desk at one of these tax preparation services. But the whole concept of a simple double pat on the back of a chair versus pointing to the chair versus saying, have a seat, just make yourself comfortable, sets the experience into a whole different pattern. Now, these clues, we learned that the way that infant seats are maintained had greater impact on the perception of a cleanliness of a car than anything you could do in that cleaning of the car. A clue called a grasp, where people were trained in traditional customer service, which was look them in the eye, thank them for their business, walk them to the door. They would lay the paperwork in a mortgage application on top of a stack of paper. And when we knew that the emotional end frame that someone had was feeling significant, how significant do you feel when what you've just worked on is cast aside? And a clue called the sweep, in terms of the way that we even open up our desk and move stuff aside, creates a different connection. So when we begin to look at these things, we even looked at language analysis and the distance in language analysis on the web from the way that we talk about it to the way that customers talk about the experience. And the language differences are huge. In one case, in a financial institution, it was over 320% different than the way customers spoke and the way customers talked about what they were looking at. It was purely transactional, and customers wanted a feeling of support. It is absolutely amazing. Even language changes in a reservation center make an incredible difference. Just how we say we have trucks available, with a 1.4 increase in vehicle utilization, sent $22 million to the bottom line at Penske, with a 40% increase in the close rate from inquiry to reservation. Our client there, the Senior VP of Marketing, says the concepts and the constructs around experience engineering give them a fresh lens for everything they do. Now, what is that fresh lens? It's moving from the world of making and selling to the world of sensing and responding. It's moving to thinking about the world from a customer-backed perspective and understanding and leveraging the role of unconscious thought. It's dealing with clue consciousness and an awareness of the alignment of clues and the management of clues as a system to create an effect. And it's the rigorous systems that you put in place to manage and develop clues. That's how you end up with a validated for consumption experience, whether it's done for investors, partners, or vendors. I mean, what does it feel like to be a vendor to some companies? Now, there's this ROI obsession, and there's always ROI that you can point to, but one of the difficulties with ROI is there is so many variables, and you watch people like, God, can I take credit for $22 million going to the bottom line at Penske? No. But what I believe we need to do is move from this ROI obsession to a new model. Something we have to ask ourselves each time. A simple acronym, ROI. We need a ROI obsession. And that's the return on why. Why are we doing something? That's what we need to begin to look at. Why are we doing it? What's the effect we want to create? How do we measure that effect? Why will it make a difference? Why wouldn't we do it? And why does it make sense? You know, we stop too soon after we reach the roadblock of ROI. And we can go on and fiddle as Rome burns, and old management thought drives us to ashes. But it's you that represent the future that can change these perspectives. It's not easy, but it's got to be done. Now, how different is the world if we frame the value we create apart from the function, that it's the effect that the business we're in creates? People think of Blockbuster, and Blockbuster thought of itself as being in the business of renting out and checking out videos. How different does that feel You know, these mission statements that we've got really bog us down in terms of understanding what the true value and potential of the value that we can create. How different does it feel being transactional versus being on a mission to provide this and not being wedded to geography? Now, some companies get caught on the downside. I worked on Howard Johnson's many years ago, the restaurant business. In the last 6 months, I think I drove them out of business. But they were on the backside of what needed to be done. Blockbuster may be on the backside. But what about another business? I'm actually going to be signing books, so I'm going to have to run to be there at 12:45. If you're interested in the Experience Management Institute or articles that we've written and things that we've done, an article that we're working on right now with actually Phil Kotler and some others that are exploring this space, drop me an email. And if you're interested in the Phoenix effect and the movement to really give the economy an enema and get people together that see where the future is, rather than having our heads in the ground, drop me a line and just in the reason market MIX09 for the reason. And it's L Carbone at Experience Engineering Inc. or experienceengineering.com, sorry, or expeng.com. I thank you all so very much for your time, and I'd be happy to answer questions for the next 6 or 7 minutes or so. Can we bring up the lights? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I think there are some microphones that are live if anyone has a question or if you just want to shout it up, and if I can hear it. We'll be okay. Any questions at all? None? Not a single one? Not even nothing?
Lou, is this on? Hi.
Yes.
First of all, thanks very much for coming out to this. And this may be more than we can answer here, but how do you give an enema to the economy?
I'm sorry.
How do you give an enema to the economy?
Animals?
An enema.
Oh, an enema. I believe that it's people getting together that really believe that things can be different, and that we get groups of people together that are interested in working with people who are more enlightened. That we bang our heads against walls. And so the ability to say, are there people that really understand that the way we've been doing business is worn out, and that we've got to be much more aware that we've moved out of the industrial age, and we're in a whole new world, and wanting to work with people like that. And to be able to identify ourselves as people who believe that, as companies and departments that believe that, as entrepreneurs that believe that and can make it happen. I believe that there is nothing that a group of, I think Margaret Mead said, there's nothing that a group of committed people can't change. And I felt like a victim until I was asked to participate in a workshop on how to market in a down economy and how to utilize your dollars during a down economy and all this stuff. And I had gone through a week of constipation, which was everyone I talked to would get me further depressed. I mean, everyone that I called that we had been talking to, well, we don't know, maybe next quarter, I can't get this guy together, and we're waiting for the next budget. And I'm like, you know what? I was so fed up. I said to the people, I don't want to do a conference like that. I don't want to go there. I'll get further depressed. I want to start getting people psyched about moving forward, rather than preaching to an audience that doesn't really care, that is into how do I get my $1 million bonus. Those people are going to be gone. If you can't see what's happening, it is huge. I don't think I've ever felt as invigorated about the possibility for change since I was in college and marching against the war. I was like, and it's like, what are we going to leave future generations? I don't want to leave a legacy like this. It's terrible. And it has to change at a grassroots level in addition to what's being done elsewhere. We can change it. We can make a difference. We have to be willing to say to people that don't understand it, I'm not going to waste my time because you're not going to spend the money anyhow. So how do we begin to create a community of companies that are enlightened, that want to become firms of endearment versus good to great firms, which I think will begin to disappear?
Oh, is this on? Hello. I agree with you that a change is due and a change is coming, and I share your hope that those people will soon go away that hold on to the old ways. What sort of recommendations and methodologies can you recommend to help us live with those people that we're stuck with for the foreseeable future?
I think it spotlights on the blockades in companies. You see, I think that CEOs are looking for answers, and it's how do we create educational forums that break the blockades. It's bringing the spotlight out on people who are hiding in the darkness of doing what was always comfortable and not challenging themselves and hiding in innovation and turning that into a process that is like assembly line manufacturing still. We need to really highlight where those blockages are. Send them articles. Continue to talk to them in your own companies. Enlightenment is the only answer.
Lou, as an Irish guy, Ryanair is something of a national shame for me, given that it's an Irish company. But if Ryanair proves anything, it's possibly that people are willing to sacrifice a bad experience for cheap flights. How, as someone who tries to sell people on the idea of like being a good company and doing the right thing, how do you deal with the retort that I often hear, which is, look at Ryanair, they're the most profitable airline in Europe, they're making so much money, you know, are they really wrong?
Yeah. It is the emotional value that we derive, and when we begin to look at cost in these particular times, what you begin to find is that people want to reward themselves with little rewards, where that emotional pocket is for them. To become that emotional pocket, because we all make choices. Some of them are driven by price, where there's no additional value provided, airlines in particular. So that doesn't work. But each one of us probably has a favorite restaurant that we will continue to go to over time. Now, we may change other habits, but what we generally find is people will go to those things that they're deeply emotionally bonded to. And it's unlocking that code that creates those firms of endearment. And I think that's the only way to begin to combat. What we see over and over again is that there is pricing elasticity, and that we rationalize, we create intellectual alibis for the things that we do to fulfill these deeper unconscious needs. So it's tapping into what those deeper needs are. And you know, it's buried in our subconscious, and it can't come from focus groups. It's really using new research techniques to understand the unspoken, the unarticulated, the unarticulatable. And you know, what we do most of our research for is to validate what we already think we know. So we ask these questions. We don't really care how our customers think or what they desire feeling. So I think that's critical, is the insights that you build the designs off of in experiences. Yes?
Thank you. Our experience in working in this area for 4 years shows us that we are getting some critical mass around Gartner and around Forrester and those who are saying, like going green or other sustainability areas, this is the final resting ground of science. And so we think about that just really quickly. We were all excited about data for a while, cool. Then we were all excited about process for a while, great. But having conquered those and seeing that still leaves a big hole, we're now ready, I think, to cast aside our assumptions about people's behavior and actually go and research every single stakeholder that touches a system and application or wants to get something done.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
I also don't see that one wearing out. So now that it's upon us, I think that's very encouraging. There's a lot of firms out there who are willing to try to lead in exactly what you said, which is how do we get inside the minds of the humans and then get a positive cause and effect and great feedback for them so that it's self-sustaining.
Absolutely.
So now that aligns very well with what you said. I don't see this as so hard. I see this as gutting it out, blocking and tackling, one company at a time, and just leading.
Yes, and the most of what we've learned in the last decade is what applies. I mean, we've learned more in the last decade about neuroscience and psychology than in the entire history of those disciplines. You're absolutely right. I think we are at a turning point, and it isn't going to be that difficult to turn the ship. Almost 3 decades ago, I would talk to groups, and it was like, who is this kook, and is he smoking the drapes somewhere? But it's changed so dramatically, and that's why I'm so excited, because I think that in my lifetime, we will actually see the ship make that turn. And thank God for the wake-up call we got in the economy. Thank God. Yes.
I know it's easy to talk about change when you're in a position of power, but what about a college student like me who's fighting just for an entry position in such a poor economy? I can't exactly just get a job as an entry position, go into a company and be like, hey, CEO, we're going to make changes. There's so many people that have been doing their job for 10 years that don't even want to make a change. They're happy with their lives. And I mean, as a college student, I mean, I have no power. I'm just this college student. I mean, I can join groups, but what am I supposed to do?
To ensure that you don't get polluted by the crud that surrounds you and maintain that freshness, that spunk, and that point of view, and match that, because the wisdom bank that you build, what life is really all about, is a whole bunch of crap that's hidden back here somewhere that we continue to pull from. And what we have to do is never be afraid to continue to discover, to fill that. So as someone in an entry level in an organization, be relentless in the pursuit of what you feel is absolutely right. And what I believe is we now have tools that move the world of design in particular to being more validated. And it's no longer the voodoo that was done with intuitive people that were very creative, that would get headstrong saying this is the way that it is. And I think we need to maintain the ability to have a real beautiful mix within companies of the blend of creativity with business. I mean, ours was one of the first business firms, business consulting firms, that had creative people, a creative group. And it was like, the hell are you doing that for? McKinsey would never have a creative group. They even do great PowerPoint. But I would say be relentless. Did I answer the question, or I may not have heard it all, or did I answer your question okay? Or?
Good enough.
Because I couldn't hear too well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's good enough.
Okay. I'm going to run over to the bookstore, and thank you very, very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you.